Hey guys, game designer consultant Bud Leiser here from budleiser.com. Today we're going to have a design review on an awesome game called AirMech. AirMech has actually been around for over a year and a half, maybe even 2 years at this point. I got in during a very early invite-only beta session and have seen a lot of changes through the game, and most of them are pretty good. So this game is easily described by just thinking if you took the old RTS Herzog Sui from Sega Genesis and mashed it together with League of Legends. You play 3-person versus 3-person online, and it differs from League of Legends because instead of buying equipment during the match, you build units and position them like little armies around the battlefield. This game should have a lot more users, but there's something clearly wrong with the user acquisition, and maybe even we can say the gameplay. So what's going on? Why do I have to wait 3 minutes in matchmaking queue just to find some opponents? Well, for starters, play the game. A lot of it feels really good, a lot of it feels very balanced, and that's because they listen to their forums. They really listen to the player feedback, and the company is small enough that they can implement these changes quickly. You don't have to go through a large bureaucracy to make changes to the game. This leads to really good balance on the AirMechs, which kind of like champions from League of Legends. You see my saucer right now, that's the AirMech. I can change it to ground mode and flying mode. And then also with your individual units. So you get these great power balances and ability balances, but still the game feels lacking. It feels like there's not a clear direction for where this game is supposed to go. It's kind of, player versus player as far as, action, but it's also very strategic on where I put my pieces. But there's the problem. So the game is supposed to be really strategic on how you send your armies out and do battle, but the way you issue commands to pieces is that you have to pick them up and then push a button. But the key here is that I want to point out is that you have to pick the unit up. And this is reminiscent of Herzog Sui from the Sega Genesis. This creates a slight advantage for defending. You simply drop the unit on the ground, and it stays near all the other units. Whereas if you're attacking, you have to sort of pick each one of them up and give them a command, such as take the nearest outpost, attack the enemy base, or follow. What happens is that you get kind of a train effect. And while this sounds really cool, and it looks cool, it's actually not as powerful as defending, because when you're defending, you have kind of this straight line of units. So when one unit walks into range, all of those units fire on that one unit, and you get a much more condensed fire pattern. But since there's no way to structure patterns with your units without manually moving them around, which is really hard to do if they start moving as soon as you issue them a command, it's hard to set up attacks with similar units that are more successful or have an edge towards success than defending. Add to this by the fact that any AirMech can pick up a unit and hover over the base to heal it very quickly. He can also drop down, take a few shots himself to block it from the unit that he's defending, and then get back up and hover over his outpost to heal up. All of these things combined make this what's a very defensive game. Yet, it's not really designed to be an hour-long game. It's clear that the designers want this game to finish in about half an hour. In fact, they even have an overtime that creates a sudden death, and both players' bases will begin to decrease in health during that overtime. But why do we reach overtime so often? I would guess that about 60% of my games end in overtime, and those are the good games. We clearly have some design issues going on. My suggestions. So here's my ideas for how to fix this and move forward. Instead of picking up a unit to give it a command, simply hover over the unit and give it a command. It only saves you maybe half a second, but when you add that up over several units, it becomes much faster and more efficient. The second idea is instead of just giving a simple command, such as go attack the nearest outpost, each of these little outposts should have lines or indicators towards other outposts, and placing them on one side of the outpost and giving them the command to attack would send them on that path. This would allow you to split your forces and attack 2 outposts at the same time, Whereas right now, there's always kind of a linear path of outposts that you're supposed to take. There's always one closer to you, and it's really hard to do split attacks. Most of all, I think it's time that they get away from just taking all the input and feedback and using that to steer the entire design direction for the game. You can't move in every direction at all times. You have to pick one and make it your primary purpose, and then kind of balance it out here and there. So my suggestion would be, keep listening to the forums for feedback on how to adjust the AirMechs and units to make them balance. But start making major changes and let one person on the team kind of take the helm. You can't have 4 people steer a ship. Sure, they'll be really good at avoiding rocks, but if they all have a different direction that they want to go in, you're just going to end up going in circles. So that's been my design review for AirMech. It's an awesome game and it's free to play, so check it out.